सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, रामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गौ गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, नवद्वीप धाम की जय, स्वामीत भक्तवृंद की जय। All glories to the Assembled Lord. All glories to the Assembled Lord. All glories to the Assembled Lord. Thank you very much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 We read from the Caitanya Caritamrta, Madhya Lila, 9th chapter, text 61. Maybe you can set up the shloka.
This is maybe a little too bright.
Uh-huh. Yes. But it looks like a horror movie.
I know, yeah. Turn maybe the lights. That better? Good. Maybe we can get some sort of a light and spotlights.
Oh, in the bunny afterward.
Yeah, it is. Okay. But otherwise, you have sun in your eyes.
Yeah, okay.
Hare Krishna.
So can you set up the shloka?
Sure. I can try.
Mandalila 9.61.
Okay.
Sharing the stream.
No, the screen is not. It's videos. Just. I'm just going to get the one with the not changed books.
What about the Prabhupada book first?
The,
It says 1977 edition, 75 edition.
I don't know. I think the IO one is a little bit better. Is it? It doesn't.
It's all changed. There's no, I don't think there's original.
Okay.
Chaitanya.
Oh, this is the 1974. This will do.
It's actually not. This is not a 75, although it says, but it's not. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and there's no need to share it.
On this page, it is not 1975.
No. Anyway. Guru Karne Kai Sabe Krishna Rama Hari. Please repeat.
Guru Karne Kai Sabe Krishna Rama Hari.
Chetana Panacharya Bale Hari Hari.
Chetana
Arya Bale Hari Hari.
Yeah.
Acharya Bale Hari Hari.
Chaitanya Kananakaya Saba Krishna Rama Hari.
Guru
Karne
Karne
Kai
Kai
Sabe Krishna Rama Hari.
Guru Kananakaya Saba.
Second.
Chaitanya Pacha Acharya Bale Hari Hari.
Chetana Panacharya Bale Hari Hari.
Guru Karne Kahe Sabe Krishna Rama Hari.
Guru Karne Kai Sabe Krishna Rama Hari.
Chaitanya Panacharya Bale Hari Hari.
Chetana Panacharya Bale Hari Hari.
Guru Karne Kai Sabe Krishna Rama Hari.
Guru Karne Kai Sabe Rama Hari.
Chetana Pana Acharya Bale Hari Hari.
Chetana Panacharya Bale Hari Hari. Guru Karne
Guru Karne
into the ear of the spiritual master.
into the ear of the spiritual master.
Kai,
Kai,
they said.
they said,
Sabe,
Sabe,
all together.
all together.
Krishna Rama Hari,
Krishna Rama Hari.
the holy names of the Lord, namely Krishna, Rama, and Hari.
The Holy Krishna.
Now,
Chaitanya.
consciousness.
Consciousness.
Pana,
Pranam.
getting.
Getting.
Acharya,
Acharya.
the
The
teacher.
teacher.
Bale,
Bale
chanted.
Chanted.
Hari Hari,
Hari Hari.
the name of Lord Hari.
The name of Lord Hari.
Translation. When all the disciples chanted the holy names of Krishna, Rama, and Hari, the Buddhist teacher regained consciousness and immediately began to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur comments that all the Buddhist disciples were actually initiated by Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu into the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And when they chanted, they actually became different persons. At that time, they were not Buddhists or atheists, but Vaishnavas. Consequently, they immediately accepted Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu's order. Their original Krishna consciousness was revived, and they were immediately able to chant Hare Krishna and begin worshipping the Supreme Lord Vishnu. It is the spiritual master who delivers the disciple from the clutches of Maya by initiating him of the Hare Krishna mantra. In this way, human being can revive his consciousness by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. In other words, the spiritual master awakens the sleeping living entity to his original consciousness so that we can worship Lord Vishnu. This is the purpose of Diksha or initiation. Initiation means receiving the pure knowledge of spiritual consciousness. One point to note in this regard is that the spiritual master of the Buddhists did not initiate his disciples. Rather, his disciples were initiated by Sri Krishna Caitanya Mahaprabhu, and they in turn were able to initiate their so-called spiritual master. This is the Parampara system. The so-called spiritual master of the Buddhists was actually in the position of a disciple. And after his disciples were initiated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they acted as his spiritual masters. This was possible only because the Buddhists received the mercy of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One is favored by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the disciplic succession. One cannot act as a spiritual master. We should take the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the spiritual master of the whole universe, how one becomes a spiritual master and a disciple. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master, as divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, has opened my darkened eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Jai.
Govinda? Ja, komm mal her schnell. Gib mir mal mein iPhone-Ladekabel. Hier ist kein einziges, was passt, ey.
So, in this Leela, Lord Chaitanya was visited by a group of Buddhists. So they made a plot against Lord Chaitanya to contaminate him with untouchable foodstuff. So they brought this untouchable foodstuff, and they were bringing some bird violet appeared the sky, and he snatched the plate and he flew high in the air, and then he dropped the plate, and the plate hit the Buddhist leader's head, and he fainted immediately. You see, so don't try to give the body some contaminated foodstuff. It's a warning by Krishna. So when he fainted, the Buddhist disciples, they became very disturbed, and they started crying, and they thought he was dead. So then Lord Chaitanya, he initiated them with the Maha Mantra. In other words, he chanted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, or he chanted the names of Krishna. And in this way, he initiated them. Here it is said, the Lord then replied to the Buddhist disciples, you should all chant the names of Krishna and Hari very loudly near the ear of your spiritual master. Okay, so he gave them an order that you should chant Krishna's names into his ear. He gave them an instruction like this. So because they were desperate, they didn't know what to do, they followed his instruction. And when they did that, the Buddhist teacher, he regained his consciousness, and he also started chanting Hare Krishna. So this is very important for our understanding, this, especially this Leela, because this is exactly the principle of preaching in Srila Prabhupada's mission. Srila Prabhupada is the initiating spiritual master That is why in the ISKCON temples, they write founder Acharya. Founder means initiator. Initiate means beginning. And foundation also means beginning. You make a foundation. It's like any building foundation. It's the beginning. And so he is the founder initiating spiritual master. And all the members of his mission, they're the spiritual masters import to initiate others on his behalf. You see, so we hear many times that initiation is a formality, but actually it is not a formality. It is the reception of transcendental sound. So we're reading, we're hearing from Srila Prabhupada. This is all initiation. Even this purport is read. These are mantras. Any instruction of Krishna is a mantra meant to deliver the hearer. So any of the shlokas from the Bhagavad Gita, they're all mantras, just like the mantra is a mantra to deliver us from the clutches of Maya. Any shloka, any statement of Krishna is also a mantra. There's no difference that, oh, this mantra is less, this mantra is more. No, in the spiritual world, there is no qualitative difference between the instruction of Krishna or the name of Krishna or Krishna himself, his form, his pastime. So Srila Prabhupada is instructing us by his instruction, and he's initiating us. And when we repeat the message to others, we're also initiating others with a transcendental sound. Now, someone might say that, well, how can you initiate? You're not an Uttamarika. You're not a purity. You can only. Yes, that is true. Unless one achieves the position of a topmost devotee, he should not become a spiritual master, Uttamarika. But you can still initiate in the sense that you repeat the instruction. You repeat the instruction. And when the devotees, just like these Buddhist disciples, they became Vaishnavas, you bring all these devotees to your Guru. This is the law of disciplic succession. Unless this submissive attitude is there, one cannot claim to be a member of the disciplic succession. So no disciple will claim to be equal to his spiritual master. The etiquette is that so long the spiritual master is present, one must bring all the devotees to his spiritual master. There is an example of this in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam in connection with Maitreya Rishi, Vidura, and Uddhava. Vidura wanted to accept Uddhava as his spiritual master. But Uddhava, although he was competent, Uddhava was a cousin of Krishna. He received an instruction from Krishna in his Gita, Uddhava Gita. This is part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. When Vidura asked him to become a spiritual man, Uddhava said, no, I cannot do because Maitreya Rishi is present. You must go to him because he is senior to me. So he sent his, thank you. he sent Vidura to Maitreya. And then Srila Prabhupada, let's read this. Although one may be well versed in the transcendental science, one should be careful about the offense of Maryada Vyatikrama, or impertinently surpassing a greater personality. According to scriptural injunction, one should be very careful of transgressing the law of Maryada Vyatikrama, because by doing so, one loses his duration of life, his opulence, fame, and piety, and the blessings of all the worlds. First, transcendental science necessitates awareness of the techniques of spiritual science. Technicalities of transcendental science advise Vidura to receive transcendental knowledge. As a spiritual master, they don't accept the post because Vidura was as old as Uddhava's father, and therefore accept him as his, especially when my present personality, even if one is competent and well versed. So Uddhava decided to send an elderly person like Vidura to Maitreya, another elderly person. But he was well versed also because he was directly instructed by the Lord while he was about to create this material, this mortal world. Since both Uddhava and Maitreya were directly instructed by the Lord to become the spiritual master of Vidura or anyone else. But Maitreya, being elderly, had the first claim to becoming the spiritual master, especially for Vidura, who was much older than Uddhava. One should not be eager to become a spiritual master cheaply for the sake of profit and fame, but should become a spiritual master only for the service of the Lord. The Lord never tolerates the impertinence of Maryada Vyatikrama. One should never pass over the honor due to an elderly spiritual master in the interest of one's own personal gain and fame. In part of the pseudo-spiritual master is very risky to progressive spiritual realization. Okay, so this is very important, this principle of Maryada Vyatikrama. As soon as the disciple wants to take over the position of his spiritual master, he becomes immediately fallen. Prabhupada makes this statement in the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. You see, so for a Vaishnava, there is no ambition. He doesn't have any ambition to become a spiritual master. He becomes a spiritual master, as Prabhupada says, only for the service of the Lord. Service means that it depends on the master. Water, then Prabhu, Maitreya, or Robert, they bring me water. So that is because I have requested. It is necessary. But if they bring me water without asking, it is not service. It is pushing. There's some ambition. You see? So in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, when the original purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is lost, there arises the necessity of reviving or reestablishing the disciplic succession. So if the spiritual master is present, that doesn't necessarily mean physically. Just like all of us here, we're chanting 16 rounds, following the 4 regulative principles hopefully. Then the spiritual master is there. Because you can see, just like there's a smoke coming out of chimney, you can understand by logical deduction there's a fire. Similarly, when you see that there are people born in Western countries who are giving up all these 4 sinful activities, rising early, chanting Sankirtan in the streets, chanting 60 rounds on Japamala, worshipping the deities so nicely, hearing the Bhagavatam, hearing the Bhagavad Gita. This is the symptom that the Guru is present. You might not see with your eyes that the Guru is there, just like you cannot see the fire. When you walk down the street, you cannot see the fire. But by the symptom, smoke coming out of chimney, you can see by the symptom. So the proof that Srila Prabhupada is still the current Acharya is, it can be also observed by the symptoms. There are his disciples, there are devotees following his instruction. And there's no one following, then okay, you can say, oh, maybe there's a need to reestablish the disciplic succession. But if there are so many people following, what is the necessity? The spiritual master is necessary to explain or re-explain, to clarify the instruction of Krishna. But when the instruction is there, very clear, and people are assimilating, and their life has changed practically, we can see by the symptoms. Srila Prabhupada says, before my Bhagavad Gita as it is, there have been so many Bhagavad Gitas, but none of them could convince a single soul to become a devotee of Krishna. Because there is no transcendental empowerment. They're all written by non-devotees who have some ulterior motive. They don't understand the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. That's why these translations had no effect. This is the whole purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. Manmana bhavaman bhakto, mamya jimam namaskuru. Krishna says, think of me, become my devotee. He explains to Arjuna, because you are my devotee and you are my dear friends, in intimate connection with Krishna. Arjuna is an intimate friend of Krishna. That is why I make you the authority of the Bhagavad Gita. So, if the instruction is clear, there was no necessity here in the presence of a higher personality. One should not be very eager to impart instructions, even if one is competent and well-versed. Very elevated devotee, but let's say Srila Prabhupada manifests here right now in his physical form, just like we saw in the 60s and 70s. And Srila Prabhupada expresses the desire to give a class. It would be a great offense from my side to insist that I give a class. See, because Srila Prabhupada is superior to me. He's always superior. This etiquette, Maryada Vyatikrama, also we can observe amongst Godbrothers. Those Godbrothers who have trained you, who have taught you, you don't ever try to find any flaw or criticize. Always remember, because this devotee took the time to preach to me. This is a great austerity to preach to conditioned souls, because the conditioned souls, they're very averse to surrender, they're averse to Krishna. So anyone who takes this austerity and takes the sacrifice, because when you preach, you must criticize. And when you criticize, there is a pushback. Else you hate it. Sometimes people hate you. Because you stopping all my sense gratification. So it is a great austerity to preach. Srila Prabhupada says it takes gallons of blood to make one devotee of Krishna. So yes, Srila Prabhupada is making all of us devotees. But those godbrothers taken the time to train you and to inspire you, to convince you to surrender to Krishna. You should be eternally grateful to them. Don't try to find any flaw. That is very bad mentality. Always, even he might fall down. Of course, that we cannot support that. But even if he falls down, don't completely reject. Always remember, yes, he has fallen, but he was the one who introduced me to Krishna consciousness, who introduced me to Srila Prabhupada. So for that, always keep respectful attitude. Otherwise, there's going to be such chaos. Otherwise, this movement cannot work. If immediately you want to equal yourself, put yourself on an equal platform with your godmother, and then overpass him and so on, that will not work. That is not a Vaishnava quality. You might have some better understanding. That is okay. But don't try to instruct. Unless that godmother is very humble and he accepts you. Here also we see with the Buddhists. The Buddhist disciples, they became spiritual master to their guru. Why? Because Lord Caitanya gave them a superior spiritual understanding. You see, but we should not become spiritual master by some ambition, by some politics. Sometimes there was a letter to Nityananda, senior Nityananda Prabhu. In 1972 was in charge of New Jaipur, I think, some farm community. And Srila Prabhupada writes that, they have voted and they have conspired and they outdid something. So Prabhupada says that unless you have a permission from the GBC, no temple president can be removed. Otherwise, there's no order. There's democracy. Of course, Srila Prabhupada also gave us an order that we should have democracy in our movement. But at the same time, he said it is dangerous because we know that democracy, if foolish people vote, modern politicians, they vote some nonsense. And similarly, if some neophyte devotees, they make a conspiracy and they outvote the leader in order to invade the false sense of power or something like that. And that is not what Prabhupada is instructing. There are limitations to this democracy. That's why Prabhupada made the GBC to keep track. There's a check and balance. So this is not a very good mentality. If you want to preach better, you make your own center. If you don't agree with your senior godbrother, make your own center. Prove yourself. But if some godbrother built a center nicely preaching, just like here Mathura Pati Prabhu, I know, because I was here in 2015, almost 10 years ago, and he was doing the same thing. He was struggling and he was preaching, very determined. And now I see the results, unbelievable results. Wonderful. This actually gives me more faith in Srila Prabhupada's instruction because I can see, it is working. Sometimes you become doubtful because so much struggle it is to preach, so much struggle to convince one person, or to speak of so many devotees here are following Srila Prabhupada's instruction. So sometimes when there is no success, you become doubtful. Am I doing things properly? Maybe the Kali Yuga is so strong that this preaching will never work. But when I see, he is done, and now devotees are here. Now the movement, the temple is blooming very nicely, like a beautiful flower, and it gives me more faith in the preaching that we're doing. See, this is a wonderful cooperation. Srila Prabhupada, he said that this is the purpose of association. When you see some other Gaudiya doing better than you, then you become also inspired. Oh, let me do even better than him. Transcendental competition, not out of envy, but out of transcendental competition, out of the great desire to please the spiritual master. See, if Srila Prabhupada is glorified, then we all benefit. If this center here in Germany, if it grows even more and more and more, it will be a great glory for us also. Because the more Srila Prabhupada is glorified, the more all of us are glorified. What is the use of trying to artificially get some glory for yourself? Don't try for that. Make Srila Prabhupada glorified. You'll be glorified automatically. And not just you, but all your godbrothers. They'll be glorified automatically. You see, so this is a very bad mentality, this idea of surpassing a superior personality. And it is all coming from this idea of surpassing Srila Prabhupada. Now claim I'm equal to Srila Prabhupada, I can be and this and that. So long Srila Prabhupada is the Karanacharya, which we can see very nicely by the symptoms. You see, so this is a very interesting purport, because Srila Prabhupada says here that the Buddha's disciples, they have initiated their guru. So they're not Diksha gurus, they're not pure devotees. I mean, they're Buddhists, and they just came, and in 5 minutes, or maybe even less, Lord Caitanya chanting Hare Krishna. There was no studying of the Bhagavad Gita and studying the July 9 letter or something. It was 5 minutes. Lord Caitanya gave him the mantra or gave him the holy name, and they chanted. And by the chanting, their Buddhist leader, he became initiated by chanting. You see, so this is also important, not just formality, but also preaching and chanting the Maha Mantra and vibrating the instructions that we have learned from Srila Prabhupada. See, this is equally important. Not everyone can read the books. Those who are distributing books, they know how many people are coming to the temple from the books. We have to distribute millions and millions of books. Then maybe 1 or 2 devotees will come. It is not so easy. Even people read it. It takes some time. It's a process. Srila Prabhupada's instructions are like kicks on the face. Those who are not devotees, these are great kicks on the face. No illicit sex, no meat eating. The Western society is low class, all dirty, this and that. You're a dog. This Srimad Bhagavatam says you're a dog. Camel, dog, swine, all these nice names are given. So it is not so easy to become a devotee just by reading Srila Prabhupada's books immediately. So we must help out. We must also repeat from all sides, stereo. They hear from Srila Prabhupada. They also hear this. We should do also. I was reading that quote yesterday. Srila Prabhupada says, we don't want to be alone, the Guru. We don't want to be alone, the Guru. All of us, we should help out. We should also vibrate the Vani. So many times we hear Vani, Vani, Vani. Prabhupada is in a Vani. So you spread that Vani. Spread it, vibrate, speak. If you give a book, but you don't preach the same thing, you give the book, but then you talk for jalpa, you speak of some nonsense, that'll be detrimental to preaching, because people see, these people are reading these books and they still talk about nonsense. So maybe these books are not even worthy of reading. Every advertising company, they know the value of peer reviews. They all give reviews. Look, so many people, they like this product. Srila Prabhupada says, a man is a social animal. We all like to follow what the other people are doing. So if you don't show proper example by preaching the philosophy that is contained in the books, people feel less inspired to read the books. Srila Prabhupada says that a program, if you run some program, transcendental program, if the books are sold at the end of the program, then the program is successful. Let's say you do some feast, Sunday feast, or some lecture, Bhagavad Gita, so and so on, and people come and they don't purchase books, then it was not very successful because you could not convince them by vibrating the instruction from the books. You see, so this is very important that we don't become lazy. Oh, Srila Prabhupada, he's in the books, he is in the Vani, now I can just chill and Prabhupada will do anything. I'm not a Madhikari, so who cares? Even if I preach, it has no value. No, it has a value. It is the instruction that empowers you to become a preacher. I explained this yesterday for detail. If you repeat the message as it is, then there's no difference between what Srila Prabhupada says and what you say. You might be a neophyte, but if you repeat the instruction, so this is also required. Not simply formalities and designations. I'm a Ritvik, I'm a Prabhupadanuga, I'm this, I'm that. Sarupari vinirmuktam tat pranatena nirmalam. You must give up all the upadis, all the designations. This is a designation. If you do not follow, that is a meaningless designation. So many designations. I'm a Christian, I'm a Hindu, Muslim. So many designations. Enough designations. There is enough designations. Act. Be a real guru. Many times we complain, so many bogus gurus, bogus, he's bogus. But if they're bogus gurus, then why don't you become a bona fide guru? Bona fide guru. Srila Prabhupada wants that. All of us, we should become gurus. This is the instruction of Lord Caitanya. Jarida Kotarika Krishna Upadesh. Amana Guru Taranidesha. This is a very, very important instruction of Lord Caitanya. Prabhupada says in a different instance in the Caritamrta that unless we assimilate this, unless we follow this order of Lord Caitanya, this Krishna consciousness movement must expand, cannot expand. Similarly, we have Srila Prabhupada's books. He has done so wonderfully for us. He has left behind such a legacy. But if we do not preach from these books, then the preaching is finished. Because Srila Prabhupada told us to preach from these books. Ultimately, one who reads the books and assimilates it, he must preach to others. He must make a center, he must make a farm, he must make something. Otherwise, these books are locked. That Diksha is locked. It cannot come out. Srila Prabhupada says Diksha is the beginning of spiritual realization. In a letter to one devotee, Prabhupada says Diksha is the beginning of spiritual realization. You see? So realization. That realization, you cannot find it in Prabhupada's books. It's not there. The realization is not there. The realization is in your heart. The knowledge is unlocking that realization. But Srila Prabhupada cannot give you realization. You have to realize. That is up to you. If you say, oh, Prabhupada, he also realizes for me. Prabhupada will for me. And then what is your bhakti? What is your contribution? What is your initiation / initiative to serve Krishna? You see? So yesterday there was a little some disagreement. Balaram Prabhu said that we should not say initiated. He took objection because I said initiated by Kapindra Maharaj Swami. So here it is directly said they have initiated in the Chaitanya Charitamrta. What is it? 9 chapter 61.
Madhya 9:1.
Yeah.
Yeah, 961.
There's a portion. One point to note in this regard is that the spiritual master of the Buddhists did not initiate his disciples. Rather, they were initiated by Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they in turn were able to initiate their so-called spiritual master. You see? So that doesn't mean they were Diksha Gurus. But they have followed the instruction of Lord Chaitanya, and they have awakened spiritual consciousness in the heart of their Buddhist leader. You see, so you can also initiate in this way by spreading the transcendental vibration and give credit to Srila Prabhupada, who is the source, who is the initiating spiritual master. He is the source of that instruction. Without Srila Prabhupada, what instruction? We have no instruction. So I'll stop here. Any questions?
I have one question for you.
Mhm.
You were mentioning this Leela and Srimad. So the etiquette is in the presence of, because Prabhupada says kind of two things. So if I remember, he says in the presence of an elderly devotee and in the presence of a more advanced devotee.
Mhm.
So now, what is the etiquette if someone approaches you and there's an elderly devotee, but he's not such an advanced devotee, doesn't have so much realization? Do you still send the perspective to him just because of his bodily age referring
No, Prabhupada said they were competent to become spiritual masters. We're speaking of elevated devotees, highly elevated devotees who were qualified to become spiritual masters. So, all the time, but I spoke to Maya body. Oh, I'm 100 years old, so now you must accept me as a spiritual master.
Right. And how would you know that he's really sense?
His realization is sufficient.
How do you understand that someone is more realized? Because you're saying that in the class,
But what he says,
what it says.
yes, you must repeat what the Guru says, what the Shastra says, what Krishna says.
Sometimes there are people who repeat. It seems on a surface level, like if you hear from them for a little while, they repeat Prabhupada's instruction or whatever, they repeat the Guru's instructions.
Okay.
But if you go and study them more, you find that maybe it's not so assimilated, all the instructions.
So then what can be done? And if the instruction is not assimilated.
So you have to study each devotee what they say.
Yeah. Ishananda Saraswati Thakur says, don't try to see a sadhu, try to hear a sadhu. Don't try to see the sadhu with your eyes, to see him with your ears. So you must hear. But if you don't hear from Prabhupada, then you will not be able to detect the misunderstanding. That's what Prabhupada says. I'm giving you these books so you can see what is what. You can see who is who. If someone is nonsense speaking nonsense. Any other questions?
I can also check the live stream, sorry.
Yes.
Well, it's not a live stream. Well, there is, but I couldn't find it.
It's right here on my.
You personally, right? Okay, so let me check. You can see this.
Anyone wants to ask a question? Now, when we shut out the comments, no more discussion. All right.
So we're gearing for this.
Grantaraj Shri Chaitanya Charitamrta ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Guru Prema, Hari Hari Bol.
Hare
Hare Krishna.